Hello, I'm Jennifer Firestein, Associate State Director with AARP Michigan, and welcome to Learn a Latte. We host Learn a Latte the first and third Wednesday of each month here live on Facebook from 10 to 10:30. We host a variety of speakers sharing their expertise as part of this morning coffee speaker series. So we invite you to sit back and relax with your favorite breakfast beverage and learn a latte. Today, we're talking about understanding and creating your advanced directives. We'll discuss the importance of creating a living will and advanced care planning. We'll share the 5 wishes document and offer tips to help you begin this important family discussion. The benefit of watching live is you get to ask your expert, get to ask the expert your questions. So if you have a comment or question, please put it in the comment section and we'll answer during today's conversation. We are posting a few helpful tools in the comments section. There are different resources that you can access. One is a document on what is an advanced directive. Another is a video to help you prepare advanced directives and free advanced directives that you can download by state. And I encourage you to check these out. The conversation is being recorded and you can come back on the Michigan Facebook page or find it at aarp.org/mi, where we archive all of our live presentations so you can watch them on demand. Today's conversation will be led by Martha York, Community Education Coordinator with the Area Agency on Aging Region 2 right here in Michigan. As a licensed social worker for over 30 years, Martha has worked as a hospice social worker, medical case manager, coordinator of a 52-bed memory care neighborhood, and now as a community educator running evidence-based programs for people with chronic health conditions. She's a certified master trainer in respecting choices, which helps facilitate advanced care planning for adults. So welcome, Martha.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good to be here.
And you've been on a number of times, and we're so grateful that you're here again talking about this because you've got such a wealth of expertise in this area. Can you just first, right out of the gate, share what an advanced directive is?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things I'm very, very passionate about. So I'm so grateful that AARP wants to feature discussing advanced care planning, because advanced care planning is a process of conversations about what ifs. What if I were to be in a situation where I'm at end of life care and I can't speak for myself? What kind of treatment would I want? Who would I want to speak on my behalf? These are what roll into what we call an advanced directive. And an advanced directive takes those conversations and those personal preferences and helps you appoint the person that you trust or people that you trust to make decisions on your behalf, only in the event that you can't speak for yourself. And it also allows you to lay out your specific treatment preferences, like what kind of life-sustaining treatment would I want to have done for me, or what would I not want to have done for me? And everyone has a different opinion about that. The beauty of an advanced directive is it becomes a legal document that can be honored and do its best to be able to make sure that your preferences are what unfolds in the event that you're in that situation.
And it's so important to have because planning is critical, because you just don't know when those unexpected emergencies, traumatic tragedies occur, and you want to be prepared.
Absolutely. It's hard for family members too, because if you've ever been in a situation where someone has unexpectedly come to a point of being, maybe they had an accident or they were put into a coma phase. And then if the family doesn't know what that person wanted as far as their treatment preferences, there can be a lot of tension between the family and the decision makers and a lot of stress about, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's the right choice. And I've heard story after story of people in those kind of circumstances who said, I don't want that to be the case for me. I want to have this conversation ahead of time in case somebody else needs to step in on my behalf. It's really a gift to your loved ones to have this conversation.
Yeah, and we've heard those stories in the media over the years where it just tears families apart because there's this in battle of what is the best decision for this person. And if they had just put that advanced directive together, then there wouldn't be the fight, there wouldn't be the tension.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There are a lot of terms that, people get confused about, when you talk about living wills, power of attorney, patient advocate, DNRs, post orders. Can you talk through each of those concepts, those ideas, and help people understand what's involved with this?
Absolutely. Many people will say, well, I have a living will. I got that written up by an attorney and I'm all set. But actually, a living will is not recognized as a legal document in the state of Michigan. The laws around advance directives vary from state to state, and it's important to understand what your local laws are. So an advance directive has to be signed and witnessed in a certain way in the state of Michigan, and it can be done without an attorney or anyone else having to do it. It can be done for $5 of buying the document itself. So we'll go more into the specifics on that. But I do want to clarify, a living will is not recognized as a legal document here in Michigan. There's also such a thing as a medical power of attorney. And a medical power of attorney is appointing that person or those people that you want to be your patient advocate or your representative, also known as a proxy, that can make these decisions about your medical treatment. And that can include your medical care, your mental health treatment, your care settings, all of those kinds of things is what you're having when you sign a medical power of attorney. But that's different than a power of attorney. A lot of people will say, well, I have a power of attorney, it's drawn up, I'm all set. But that's actually referencing your financial affairs. And these are two separate worlds. Talking about your finances is one area, talking about your medical treatment is a separate area. So you would want to have a medical power of attorney drawn up. And then the other couple of terms you mentioned, one was a DNR, which is a do not resuscitate order. And what that is that's a medical order that's written up between the doctor and the patient as to their preference on CPR only, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So in the event that your breathing stops or your heart stops beating, this DNR would say, I don't want CPR to be done. I don't authorize that. And that's only done with talking between the patient and the healthcare provider. Somebody else doesn't make that decision unless you are unable to make that choice yourself. The final term that you mentioned was a post order. And what that is that's a physician order for life-sustaining treatment. And that can have specifics about whether or not you want antibiotics, whether you want intubation with a respirator or, artificial breathing, if you would be open to having feeding tubes, that kind of thing. And a post order is typically a form that's filled out in your doctor's office or in a healthcare setting. A lot of times they'll do it before a surgical procedure or something. And that's usually only good for 1 year and has to be redone annually. As opposed to an advance directive that whatever the most recent one that was completed is the one that can be honored. And so it can be several years old and still be effective as a legal document.
So you were talking about the DNRs, the do not resuscitate. In a situation of an emergency where, let's say, you have to call in an ambulance and a person is non-responsive, how does that get communicated to like the EMT? So where do you put that advanced plan document? Where do you put the DNR document so that, your wishes right out of the gate are carried through?
Such a great question, because I've seen many times where people have taken the effort to create an advance directive and then it gets tucked away in a lockbox or a bedroom dresser drawer or something that nobody knows where it is and they can't reference it. And in the event of an emergency, you want it ready, you want it available. I oftentimes tell people there are certain, you can put it in the sleeve and have it posted right on your refrigerator door so it's easy to access, or even roll it up and put it in a tube that goes into your freezer. A lot of times the medical personnel will know to look at the refrigerator or freezer to see if there's any specific information. But you do want to make copies and get it out to your doctor, your loved ones, the people who might be stepping in, neighbors that might step in for your care. Because if there's a medical emergency, let's say I fall down the stairs, I'm knocked unconscious, and I'm a stage 3 breast cancer survivor. So I've thought about many of these kinds of scenarios, right? And so if I was back in treatment again, I had a recurrence of my cancer treatment, I might feel like I don't want all sorts of life-sustaining treatment. In which case, if I fell down the stairs and I hit my head and I'm going to be sent to the hospital, I might want to say, I don't want any of this resuscitation to happen. And I want people to have that document ready and handy to understand that. But if an EMS arrives, they're legally obligated to do everything possible to keep someone alive. So they're going to put people on an artificial respirator. They're going to do CPR. They're going to do tube feeding if needed. So to be able to lay out these preferences and make sure that gets communicated right up front is really essential to having your wishes honored.
So when they come, they know to look on the fridge or in the freezer. That's kind of a universal location. But what I'm hearing is make sure that there are copies that your family members have, the doctors have, that people know, so that there's no question and no guessing on this.
Absolutely. In fact, I encourage people to not only have the conversations with the people that you trust as being your patient advocate, and we need to talk about that too, how you pick a patient advocate, but not only do you want conversations with them and the people that are part of the document and part of your care, you also want it to go out to the people that you didn't include, who might feel a little oppositional. And you want to say, you know what, if the event happens that so-and-so that I've appointed needs to step in on my behalf, I want you to respect them and honor what they're trying to do, because I've expressed my wishes to them. They understand it, and I am asking you to be respectful of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Martha, can you share some situations or scenarios where an advance directive does come into play?
Absolutely. So we've talked briefly about like that fall down the stairs, right? There's an accidental injury or maybe a car accident where someone is rendered unconscious. And there are other scenarios too, where you might have someone that's in a coma they might have a terminal illness or a medical crisis that puts them into a coma, or they could be in a severe and permanent state of brain damage. Let's say they did have a bicycle accident that created a head injury that the person is now unable to speak or comprehend or respond. Their eyes might be open, they might be looking around, but they're really not engaging in a purposeful two-way kind of communication. So any of those kind of scenarios could lead to having a patient advocate step in and be making the medical decisions on your behalf. And it only becomes active when you are unable to speak for yourself. So if let's say I had that fall and I'm a little bit injured, but I'm still able to communicate my wishes, whether it's waving a pinky, yes and no, as to what my choices are, or blinking my eyes or something. If I have some way that I can still communicate, this does not get activated. It only gets activated in the event that you're unable to speak for yourself. And so I think sometimes people are nervous to assign someone else as their patient advocate, thinking they're going to take over control of their life. That doesn't happen. It only happens when the person is unable to speak their own wishes and preferences.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to make, because even in that moment, whatever is on that document, you might not want that to be followed through with, because you're in a place where you can make those decisions. But if somebody were to step in and say, oh, no, here's the advance directive, and you're saying, no, that's not what I want, it's just, I think that's an important point to make, that until you can't communicate, you still get to make whatever decisions you want. That document is for you in case you can't communicate.
Absolutely. And it can be modified over time. It's not a one and done. In fact, I remember I took time to fill one out prior to my cancer diagnosis. And I had my dad and another relative as my patient advocates at the time. And now they are deceased, so they couldn't be my patient advocates. I need to create a new one. And my opinions about what kind of care I would want are different as a cancer survivor than they were prior to that. I've got other considerations now. So it's about quality of life for me and what my choices are. And the same thing is true for someone else. You may feel like I want everything possible done for me. I want every CPR, artificial breathing, tube feeding available. That's okay. It's all personal. But you want to revisit this if you have something like a chronic condition that comes up, or if you go through a divorce, or you go through some other monumental life change. You want to keep revisiting these documents and make sure they still reflect what your choices for treatment would be, who your choices for a patient advocate would be, because our relationships may change. And if you're like, I no longer want that sister-in-law on my document, you can revise it. You just need to tear up the old one, create a new one. And when it's signed and dated properly, whatever is the most recent is going to be the one that's going to be honored as a legal document.
And your wishes do change over time, because what you may want at the age of 20 can be vastly different compared to when you're 90.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've seen that with people. I do a lot of advanced care planning one-on-one and with families and within groups, and people sometimes ponder, they're like, well, I'm not really sure what I would want. So a lot of it is an imagine when or imagine if scenario. And you do it based on what your personal biases and experiences are now. And that may change over time. You may go through a different experience where your personal preferences are modified. That's okay. You can do that.
We did get a question going back to DNRs. The question was, there are many reasons for heart failure, and can you put specifics in the DNR?
I don't believe you can with a DNR. That would be a good conversation to have with your healthcare provider. I mean, do not resuscitate means do not resuscitate. But in the advanced directives, especially 5 wishes, or I have another sample, a designation of patient advocate, you can do 3 different kinds of scenarios. You can do okay, it can be like, I want everything done and all, like I want everything possible done for me, or I want nothing done. I'm not into having machines. I don't want anything done. Or you can do sort of a middle of the road. In the event of, I've got a condition that the doctor expects me to recover from, I may be okay with being, having an artificial respirator for a period of time, or being in a medically induced coma and having some tube feeding. Like, you can definitely put some specifics in that say, until it gets to this point where there's no coming back, and the doctor in their best estimation says, I don't think they're gonna bounce back out of this situation. I at that point would want life-sustaining measures pulled. I wouldn't want the artificial sustaining to go on. But until then, I want as much done as possible. So you have the A, B, or C kind of choices, all, nothing, and in the middle.
So when we're talking about specifics, what goes into creating an advanced directive?
Great question. So the first part of an advanced directive is selecting your patient advocate or advocates. And I always like to educate people on the fact that your patient advocate does not have to be next of kin, a blood relative. It just needs to be someone or people that you trust that will honor what your wishes are. And they have to be age 18 or older. So you may have a cousin or a neighbor or a best friend that you're like, they get me. They know what I want. They would be able to stand up in the middle of a crisis and advocate on my behalf. Whereas some people might say, well, I thought I had to pick my spouse. And for some people, the spouse may be like, gosh, if you were at end of life, I don't care what you say your wishes are. I'm going to want to do everything possible to keep you alive. And so that may not be the right person for you to pick as your advocate. If you're like, I don't want to be on, that's not quality of life to me to be on a respirator for long periods of time if I'm non-responsive, or to have CPR done that might break my ribs and other things that I that's not appealing to me. I don't want that. So picking your patient advocate means selecting someone that is of sound mind and would be able to step in and speak on your behalf and honor your preferences. You can have more than one. You can appoint only one, but I oftentimes recommend to have a couple that you have as backup. So for example, my aunt is in Indiana, and she has me as her patient advocate, but she also has her roommates as her patient advocates. So when she has a health emergency, I'm out of state, they communicate with me, we collaborate together, and we make those decisions together on her behalf. But it's helpful to have, if they were waiting for me to get there to respond, it might have been that they've already had to do life-sustaining treatment, even though that's not what she wants. So I think it is helpful to have a local person as well as the others that you appoint. I'm child number 6 of 7, and my dad had all 7 of us kids on his advanced directives. He didn't want to show partiality to one over the other. And, it's important to pick that person who can speak up in the heat of the moment too, that you think is going to have their wits about them to say, this is the choice that they would have wanted. So you want to pick your 5 wishes document. Starts off with a selection of your healthcare agent or patient advocate, and you can name more than one there. A nice thing about this document, the 5 wishes, is that it on the first or second page, it shows you all the states that it is recognized as a legal document. It's actually in 42 states now that they would all honor this 5 wishes. So if you tend to travel out of state or you go visit family members in other states, it's nice to know that this could be honored there, and you want to keep copies with you in your luggage and in your glove compartment of your car and your purse and all that as well. So after you've selected that patient advocate, you also have a chance to say what you do or do not want them to have the freedom to do on your behalf. So they're going to be the ones interpreting the instructions from the doctors. They're going to be the ones giving consent to treatments or moving someone to an assisted living facility, for example, or hospice care. And if you're like, well, I'm okay with them making decisions for me, but I don't want to go out of state for care, you can put specifics like that into your document. But you need to make them understand that they're saying, I agree to the best of my ability to honor this if the event arises. Then the advanced directive will go into your treatment choices. So we talked about those different scenarios, Jennifer. Let's say you are close to death and your doctor or another healthcare professional decides that they think you're pretty likely that you're going to die within a short period of time, and any life support treatment would only delay the moment of your death. You can say, yes, I want all life support treatment possible, that A, B, or C, right? I don't want any. If it's been started, I want it stopped. Or you can say, well, I want it as long as they think it could help. But once they determine that it's not going to help my health condition or my symptoms to improve, I want it withdrawn. So you got your A, B, or C. That's like if you're close to death. Or they've got the same kind of scenarios here of what if I was in a coma and not expected to wake up or recover? What if I had permanent and severe brain damage and I'm not expected to recover? I think that the key here is that I'm not expected to recover. What would look like quality of life to you at that point? Would you be comfortable with being sustained on a respirator? Would you be comfortable with being sustained with a tube feeding if you're not able to interact, communicate, respond to others? For many people, that does not feel like good quality of life, and they would say, no, I don't want that. And that's when it's important to complete an advanced directive.
And people can access that document at 5wishes.org. You said it's recognized in the state of Michigan. Is there anything else that has to be done with that document? Does it have to be notarized? Like, what are the next steps to make it a legal document?
Great question. So in Michigan, there's a separate form of patient acceptance by healthcare agent or your patient advocate. There's a separate piece of paper that needs to be printed out and signed by the patient advocates that you've appointed, saying, I agree to this, to be this person for you. So in order to be a legal document in the state of Michigan, there's a couple of things that need to happen. Number one, you need to sign it and date it, and you need to have 2 witnesses that are watching you sign it that are of sound mind and are not the patient advocates. They're not an employee of your healthcare provider. They're not financially responsible for your healthcare. They're not, in other words, someone that could gain from you having an end of life. You know, if there's someone that's on your will that's going to get a big inheritance, they're not the person you want as the witness. So the witness can be a next door neighbor. It can be your person who delivers your home delivered meals. It doesn't have to be someone that you know well. And they're not saying they agree or disagree with what you're signing. They're just basically saying you're signing of your own free will, that nobody's twisting your arm, and they're acknowledging that they saw that signature happen. So you need 2 witnesses and yourself with the same date of all those things signing. Then you also need in Michigan this separate patient advocate page that needs to be signed and dated as well. I like to have all the dates match. So if it's possible to have your patient advocate sign and date it the same day, that's really good. But that way there's no questioning between it. Now, you do not have to have this notarized. In the state of Michigan, we don't require that. So once you get those signatures and those witness statements, you are done. This is a legal document that will be honored in the state of Michigan, which is easy, right? Very easy. In Missouri, North Carolina, South Carolina, and West Virginia, they do ask for notarization. So you would want to make sure you're doing it if you're going to carry it through in any of those states. But you don't have to have an attorney. You don't have to pay somebody else to do this for you. Anybody can fill out a 5 wishes document, or this is another similar form. It's called a designation of patient advocate form. It's a little bit more simple. The 5 wishes has other additional wishes about your level of comfort. Like, do I want a lot of people around? Would I want friends visiting, or would I want to be by myself? Would I want, what kind of comfort care do I want? Do I want people praying over me? Do I want no one praying over me? You know, like all those things you can specify very personally and make it, you can X out things that you don't like in the document. You can write in things you want added. You can say what kind of music you want playing. You can do anything like that with the 5 wishes document. It adds a little bit more of those details in.
And we talked about for the state of Michigan. Now, if people are outside of the state of Michigan and they want to access the document, how do they find out about their own individual state?
When you go to that website, the 5wishes.org, it does have different states that you can verify, like if there's a different document or a different element that needs to be done for the various states. You can also Google that or talk to your local area agency on aging. There are area agencies on aging all across the U.S. So if you're in a different state and you want to find out what their laws are, someone there should be able to point you in the right direction to get those answers.
Okay. And we do have a question from Stephanie. She says, as an advocate, I was told that I could override a person's DNR directive for a designated period of time on the chance that she may respond, but it had to be confirmed by doctors for a short period of time. Is that true?
You know, it is true, because if you're unable to speak for yourself, you're hoping that they're going to be able to honor your preferences and your treatments, but we don't ultimately have control over what unfolds. And so sometimes there may, let's take that scenario, like I fell down the stairs, right? I might be able to recover from that. I might just have a temporary unconsciousness that I would recover from, and maybe I would want some life-sustaining treatment to be done for a period of time. And my husband and my kids may speak up on, you know, and say, well, I know mom said she doesn't want to be resuscitated, but I think in this scenario, she might need it for a little period of time and she's going to recover. So absolutely, as the advocate, you have full say, and you're going to make those decisions to the best of your ability at that time. And they may not line up with what the advance directive says, or they may, but the idea, their concept and the theory behind it is that you've talked this through with that person, and on a gut level, you'll be like, I feel like this is the right decision. I feel like I know what I need to do here, and they would be okay with this. It's when we don't have those conversations ahead of time that it gets so stressful, because, you know, you could be, I love Stephanie's scenario here, right? Like if there's a chance that she's going to respond, what do we do here? I think I do want to have them resuscitated for now. Mm-hmm. So.
Yep. And we have another question from Anne. She's asking, is this the same as advance directive for healthcare?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So advance directives, 5 wishes, designation of patient advocate form, these are all kind of the similar terms. They're all regarding that medical treatment. It's just not the power of attorney, which is more your financial treatment. So yes, you're absolutely right. And that's the correct term. Advance directive for healthcare is correct.
Okay. Then Carol is asking, do you have alternate patient advocates execute acceptances from the beginning date of the medical power of attorney?
Yes, you whoever you write on that document, you want to put a signature on it verifying that they accept that role. So it's important that before you start signing and having them sign, that you have this conversation with them and say, you know what, I really feel like I trust you, and I want to share with you what my preferences would be. Are you okay with that? Because you don't want to put someone's name on there who says, hands up, I don't want any part of that. You want to make sure that that's someone who feels comfortable. And so, yes, when you go to make it a legal document, you want to have signatures of everyone that you've lined out as your advocates on there.
Okay. So you referenced the 5 wishes document, and then there's also the conversation project. Can you just talk about that and refer people to that?
Absolutely. I use pieces of the conversation project all the time when I'm doing these presentations because they give you all sorts of things to consider when you start looking into what might my preferences be. Because a lot of people say, gosh, I don't even know where to begin. How do I start to think about this? Well, think about like if you were at end of life care, would it be important to you to remain pain-free? Would it be important to you to say goodbye to certain people in your life? Would it be important to you to prevent arguments with the family, knowing what you want? Are you someone that wants to not die alone? You want a big crowd around you. Now, my mother was very private. She was hoping that nobody would be around, and she picked her moment to pass away when everyone had somehow stepped away from the room, right? Everyone's got their personal preferences on that. Me, I want a big party. I want everybody around. So you can say what your preferences are, and you can say things like, it's important to me that people pray, or it's important that people have a good sense of humor. I want lots of jokes being told, like what is important to you so that you don't feel like you're being a burden to others, but you are expressing to others what looks like a good end of life for you. And the conversation project also gives some great considerations about like, how do I even get this started? What's a good time to talk about this? And where would I be comfortable talking about it? Do I want to go meet somebody for coffee? Do I want to do it at the next holiday gathering where I've got all sorts of family present? And then how do you even start that conversation? You might say things like, well, do you remember when Uncle Jim died and it was this certain circumstance? Wow. In my opinion, that was not such a good death, or that was a hard death. And I just want to make sure that that kind of thing doesn't happen if I'm the one that's in that situation. So it gives you a chance to kind of revisit, what did we go through before, and how do I want mine to look similar, or how do I want mine to look different? So, the conversation project gives you all sorts of things to consider and ways to approach this conversation with others, because it can feel awkward, right? I love talking about death and dying. My family knows that's one of my favorite things.
But most people don't. That's the thing.
Right.
And that's why most people don't have their advanced directives in place, and it's so easy, especially in the state of Michigan, where you said it's just a matter of getting some signatures. So there's not a lot of legal hoops you have to jump through. So everybody should have one. Everybody should do it, because you never know what the unexpected might bring, and that's the bottom line. So if people want to get in touch with you, they can email you at martha.york@r2aaa.net.
Absolutely.
And if people want to access the Conversation Project, it's theconversationproject.org, and the document 5 Wishes can be found on 5wishes.org. We've got all of that provided for you in the comment section, so you can access it there. And Martha, thank you so much. You have been just a wealth of information. We just love having you on Learn a Latte, and this has been very valuable information. So I hope that people really step forward and take the next steps to get their advanced directives in place.
Well, my pleasure. And if there's anyone who says, I need someone else's help with this, you can always reach out to me. You can reach out to your local area agency on aging. You can also talk to your patient navigators, your social workers at your doctor's offices. Many of them will provide a free document for you as well. So there's a lot of places that you can go to get the assistance if you feel like, I just want someone else to talk me through this or look it over. We're happy to do that for you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Martha. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And so we invite you to join us the first and third Wednesday of each month for Learn a Latte Live. In 2 weeks, we'll be discussing the buzz of CBD oils. And plus, we have a variety of other virtual events like rhythm drum circles, gardening, and more. So visit aarp.org/MI to register for all of our upcoming virtual events. And thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again.